Hello, I'm James Wells, Education Manager at Crayola. Art helps us learn about all sorts of topics. Today, we will be discussing Black history. In 1926, Black History Week was first celebrated in the U.S. due to the efforts of Carter G. Woodson and other prominent African Americans. The intent was to raise awareness of the contributions of African Americans. This week-long celebration was expanded to a month in 1976 under President Gerald R. Ford. We continue to celebrate Black History Month today and believe that it's important to pay tribute to and reflect upon the African American experience throughout the year. You have told countless stories. Some we will highlight today, but let's begin with your story. Please tell us about how your childhood creativity and curiosity led you to pursuing a career in the arts.
Well, I was definitely a creative kid. I loved to tell stories, and from a really early age, I loved drawing. I used to express myself a lot through arts and crafts, but mostly through copying the artwork that I saw on the cartoons that I loved to watch. And then as I got older, through the pictures in magazines that I really enjoyed. But I realized I wasn't exactly expressing myself through my artwork. I was learning a lot, but I was mostly copying. When I realized a little bit later that drawing can be a form of storytelling, I think it unlocked a whole new relationship I had with art. And so I got so excited about trying out different media, different tools to see how you can transform a story just through the different techniques that you use on the paper or with whatever media you use. And so I've expanded from different drawing tools to film and photography, but my true love will always be with the tools that you'll get your hands a little bit messy, crayons and pastels and oils. So I think storytelling was always there, but I didn't really know how to harness it. So I'm really grateful now that I get to chat with young people and talk about my journey, but also I got to learn about a lot of incredible artists and leaders through the works in my book. And I get to share that information and kind of showcase how everyone has a different path towards the thing that they love to do. So I think it was really important to be able to have those different steps in my creative career to realize that this is the way that I like telling stories.
Can you read a few sections from the book, particularly those who offered new insights to you?
So the first one I want to share is Alice Ball. If anyone is following along and wants to read along with me, she's on page 22. Alice Ball, born in 1892, passed away in 1916, was a chemist and medical researcher. Both Alice's mother and grandfather were photographers, and as a child, she developed an interest in the chemicals used in photography. She went to college in her hometown of Seattle and earned not one, but 2 degrees in pharmaceutical chemistry and pharmacy. What an accomplishment for a young woman. At the time, most of the African American population in the city was employed in service professions, cleaning homes or making food, for example. But Alice defied expectations and her circumstances by seeking an education and a career in science. In 1915, Alice became the first woman and the first African American woman to graduate with a master's degree from the University of Hawaii. While working on her thesis, she developed what would become the leading treatment for leprosy, a serious, incurable disease. She found a way for oil from the seed of the chalmugra tree to be absorbed in the bloodstream. This treatment became the primary method that would be used until the 1940s, but for a long time, no one knew Alice was the inventor. Less than 2 years after her discovery, Alice died, and the director of her program took credit for her findings. Alice's method became known as the Dean method. It wasn't until the 1970s that historians unearthed the truth and worked to ensure that Alice got credit for her important discovery. On February 29, 2000, the University of Hawaii recognized her for her work and dedicated a plaque to her on the only chalmuga tree on the school's campus. That day, the Lieutenant Governor of Hawaii declared February 29th Alice Ball Day. So that's Alice Ball. And I find it so exciting and empowering to know that despite the challenges of her time, she accomplished so much. And I'm grateful that her story was uncovered and able to be shared with us. If her story was continued to be lost to history, I feel there's so many young people who might be excited to learn about chemistry and photography and how that could lead to changing the world. I think that that's so important. I welcome as many young readers as possible to read through these stories and maybe find any little bit of a connection. One other person that I would love to read about is an artist. Now, I find it very easy and exciting to read the stories of artists, and very easy and exciting to see myself in their stories. So I definitely wanted to fill these books with the stories of lots of different people, so there'd be something for everyone in here. Alma Woodsey Thomas was born in 1891 and passed away in 1978. Born in Columbus, Georgia, Alma grew up in a home surrounded by lush landscapes and beautiful plants. In her youth, Alma showed promise in architecture, but was truly in love with art. She said that when she first walked into her first art classroom in high school, it felt like entering heaven. She enjoyed working with children and pursued a career in teaching kindergarten. She taught arts and crafts for several years before attending Howard University. She was the first student in Howard's brand new art department whose founder encouraged her to paint full-time. Upon graduation, though, she returned to her first love, education. She devoted her life to children, teaching at Shaw Junior High School for 35 years. She continued painting and pursued her master's degree in art education at Columbia University in New York City during her summers off. She is most often associated with the group of artists belonging to the color field movement, painters who worked only with large shapes or fields of color to express themselves. When she retired from teaching in 1960, Alma concentrated on painting full-time. She had a big art show at Howard University for which she created something totally different from anything she had ever done before. Inspired by nature, she created paintings with tiny, bright rectangles and repeating shapes. It became her signature style. In 1972, when she was 80 years old, Alma's paintings were exhibited at the Whitney Museum of American Art. This was the first ever solo exhibition of an African-American woman artist at one of America's most important art museums. Alma is truly a testament to being dedicated to the thing you love and having the patience to let it grow. So this is Alma Woodsey Thomas. And the quote that I put down here, she says, "Color is life." And I think you can see that when you look at her artwork. I wanted to make sure that I could exhibit how color brightened up everything around her. The illustrations in this book are pretty simple. I tried to focus a lot more on the figure and the costume and the hair, and let the backgrounds be a little bit more subtle.
What inspired you to write this book?
Well, just like the story you shared about Carter G. Woodson, I was inspired by Black History Month. I really wanted to challenge myself to learn about a woman in history every day for the month of Black History Month. Fortunately, I was able to turn this sort of challenge for myself into a book to be able to share with other people. And so just like you shared, when Carter G. Woodson founded Negro History Week, one of his main thoughts was that he wanted to celebrate the long neglected stories of African Americans. And so I really wanted to focus on Black women specifically, because there are so many stories that I often heard a lot during Black History Month. And I realized there were so many people's stories that I had never heard about. And I wondered how my life had been different if I had learned about some of these incredible artists and historians and scientists when I was a little bit younger. So I was really impacted by this idea of celebrating our stories that may have gotten lost or forgotten or neglected, and to shine a light on them. And so many of them are so inspiring and just feel like, why didn't we know this sooner? So there are some really incredible ones that I'd love to share with you guys today. But when I had the opportunity to turn it into a book, I realized like I wanted to make something that young people will enjoy. When I was a little kid, I didn't necessarily love history. So I wanted to make something that felt warm and inviting. And when you flip through the pages, it felt sort of like looking through a candy shop, all the bright colors, something to invite you in. And I created the character to look a certain way. I could have drawn each of these famous women to look like themselves, but instead I created my own character and sort of had them dress up as these famous people. In that way, I hoped that any young reader could turn to any page and see a version of themselves in that person's story. So I was really happy to be able to work on this book and a few others, and I learned so much along the way.
Could you demo your approach to drawing little leaders?
We're going to sketch out a few simple shapes that everyone knows how to draw. I'm just going to use my colored pencil to start with, and I'm going to work pretty lightly, and I'm going to be a little bit messy with it. I don't want to be perfect at this stage. I just want to put a few lines down. So first I start with something that's sort of halfway between a circle and a square. Imagine you had a circle and you kind of smushed it down, sort of like you had a hamburger and you kind of pushed it down a little bit. So I'm rounding out the sides, and look how many lines I'm putting down. I'm sort of just working out my shape until I can get one that I like, and then I start going a little bit darker. And then I can add really simple things to turn this into a face. So we are going to use the letter C to draw everything else. So what does the letter C look like? So we have A, B, and C. So we're gonna use that. We're gonna take our C's and add them to the face. So let's do one in the center. We're gonna roll that C, and I sort of wanted to treat the backgrounds like these little doodles and little sketches to showcase this sort of imagination. So we can do that and add that to our drawing. We just have a figure. We need a body. So I'm going to do the rest of the shapes of the body with things that we all love. So the shape of my body is going to be something like a butternut squash. So I'm going to take that shape and kind of sketch it out again, my very loose lines with my colored pencil. Now, I don't have an eraser on the end of my colored pencil. That's for a good reason, because I don't like to erase. I like to just keep my lines there and really just enjoy all of those little sketch marks. To me, that helps turn a drawing into something really lively, full of life. So, okay, now we have a body. I'm going to draw some arms and some legs with another one of my favorite vegetables, carrots. Actually, baby carrots to be exact. So I'm just going to sketch out a couple of baby carrots. And I think I'm going to go for a pose sort of like Mae Jemison here. She's got her arms on her hips and her legs kind of going out. So we want a baby carrot there and a baby carrot there. So we've got nice kind of hero pose. And I think of this, all of these things, these simplifications of drawing as sort of like a skeleton. So I'm thinking of this as the underneath of my costume are these little things that help build the shape. And so I can just add outlines to all of these things. And now I have my character. So who is it that I'm drawing? What am I going to do with this character now that I have it? Because really at this point, I could turn it into anyone. You could think about someone who inspires you. You could think about someone you admire or look up to, someone from history. You know what? I think I'm going to draw someone very familiar to me. I'm going to start adding some color. So I'm going to color in with my crayons, I think, because I really want to add some texture to this drawing. So I think the hair is probably going to be pretty dark. Oh, I love that texture. And I can add in a few different colors, like some lighter ones and some dark ones to get some highlights. I always tend to make like a messy part of my page, and I think that's perfectly fine. What I could always do is cut this character out and put it on a background after I'm finished drawing. So maybe that's what I'll do. So I'm not really too worried. So I like to test out my colors on the side. I like to see how I might want to use them and how I can mix them. I think that's a really important part of making art, is being really comfortable with making mistakes and getting a little bit messy. So let's color in some hair. I think that'll help me really get this character taking shape. Maybe it's just because I like drawing hair. I can't ever wait for that part. So my favorite thing about crayons is you get this really nice kind of gritty texture with the colors. So I'm going a little bit light right now so I can color in that whole area with texture. And I'm going to go back over top of it with a little bit more dimension with my lights and my darks. The hair behind the head and kind of below is going to be a little bit darker, and add in some dimension. So add in like a little bit slightly rosy cheeks in there just to make it pop a little bit. And it's looking so soft and friendly. It reminds me of illustrations in the books that I really liked when I was growing up. Sort of bedtime stories. Now, I didn't draw the top of the hair because I'm thinking I might want to add a hat, but now we have our character. So if you were following along and you drew yourself, I'm going to challenge you to think about, where do you see yourself in the future? Or what would you like to imagine for yourself? So I love often to think of myself as an astronaut, and I like to put myself in outer space and add stars. I got asked this a lot as a kid, and it's, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't think anyone has to have an answer for that right away. I think it's really incredible and really important to dream and to let yourself imagine different opportunities for yourself. And when the time is right, you'll be able to know exactly what you want. I think my mind changed a lot when I was a young person. So even though I wanted to be an artist when I was really little, I changed my mind a bunch of times. So I think it's really cool and important that you can change your mind and you can just try out lots of different things. So I'm going to test out this crayon to make a nice light pink top. I'm gonna test it out over here first and see if I can accomplish what I want. Okay, that's definitely working. So I couldn't quite make the color that I wanted on the page, but I just mixed together these water-soluble crayons and added a little bit of water and got the color that I wanted. I can just add layer by layer and make sure it gets right where I want it. And even though I didn't know this was gonna happen, my lines kind of look like my shirt has a nice pattern on it, which I didn't expect. So that's one of the fun things about this kind of way of drawing, is letting things just kind of show up on the page. If I had erased those things, I might have ended up with probably a fine shirt, but now I've got an interesting shirt. Maybe I'll add buttons to this so that it kind of matches the skirt. And I need to add some more dark bits. I'm gonna do it with a little bit of water because I want a little bit more control over it. Almost there. I'm just going to fill in my skirt and then add a few outlines, and I think I'll be done.
As you begin to wrap up your figure here, can you demo for us how a young artist would add those simple lines and details in the background to bring the story of their figures to life?
Yes, absolutely. So like I mentioned, I like to work a little bit messy. One thing that I can do is cut my figure out and put them on a new background. So I'm gonna do that. And then I can add all this little details. So showcase that she's imagining herself as an artist one day. So I can paste my figure down and I can use my white crayon to kind of add in some of those little details. So I've got my background, but what is it that my character is dreaming of? Well, she's dreaming of lots of things. She's an artist, so she imagines all kinds of worlds and places that are real and magical and fantastical. So I love to start with some stars, but also I like to add in these little symbols or icons that could help signify what this person does or loves. So maybe I'll add a paintbrush, sort of based on one of the paintbrushes I used today. So we have a paintbrush, we can add in some of these little details, and there's sort of like magic coming from it. How about a crayon? This person is super inspired by crayons, so we're going to add one of those. And let's add in a ground that she's standing on. I'm really inspired by nature, so I'm gonna add in some plants, some flowers. Let's say books are really inspirational for me, doing lots of research and reading about all these people in history. Who knew that that would become a part of my career as an artist? I wouldn't have expected that. So I'm gonna put some history here, and let's add in a symbol for science, some atoms, nuclear symbol. So we've got art, science, history, add in a few more stars. And I live in the city now, so I'm gonna add in a city in my background over here. So we've got nature over here. This maybe symbolizes where I came from, my home in Virginia, where I'm from. And then here we can have the city, all the little windows, all the lights. Now that I've labeled this person artist, I think I'm almost done. I'm going to glue her down onto the page. So let me add a little bit of glue. I said a little bit, but I'm adding a lot of glue. Okay, and now I'm just gonna give it a little once over. I like to make sure everything is feeling just right. So I can add in details until whenever I feel like it, because sometimes it can feel like an art piece is never finished, like it's never good enough or it's never done. But, you know, I think you can usually feel it when it's right, or when you feel like you're done with it. I think that is perfect. How are you guys doing with your drawings? I'm feeling like mine is pretty much done. I don't know if there's much more I can add other than an emphasis that this story is still being told. So I can always keep adding to my drawings, and I can always contribute to my story and make sure it's always doing exactly what I want it to do. So if I want to add another page to this, add another chapter to my story as an artist, I can always do that. But I'll always be really happy for this moment, this version of myself as an artist that I saw as a kid. And I think it's really exciting that I get to do all of this through my artwork. I get to imagine all these different worlds and possibilities. So I really look forward to seeing the work that you guys have done. I'm so excited to see how you use the materials differently, because that's what's so special about artists, is we all express ourselves in different ways. I'm so happy that I got to play with all these really cool materials today. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, looking forward to seeing what you made.
I think even when something is complicated, even when it's hard, even when you don't like it, it's a really important step in the journey towards becoming the artist that you want to be. So I just encourage all of you to work on your drawings and figure out what it is that you like, because that will always encourage your style and your artwork to be the best way for you to express your stories. So I challenge you to keep going and feel confident in your artwork.
We want to thank Vashti Harrison for inspiring us today. And to keep up with Vashti's work, visit her website and follow her on social media. And we want to thank all of you for joining us today. Be bold, dream big dreams, and color the world with your leadership.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining.
Bye-bye.